So now let's look at cells in more detail. Yeah, so for more information on cells, you can go to the cell biology page on Wikipedia. So let's go over it further. So cell theory states that cells are the fundamental units of life, that all living things are composed of one or more cells, and that all cells arise from pre-existing cells through cell division. Most cells are very small, with diameters ranging from 1 to 100 micrometers, and are therefore only visible under a light or electron microscope. And here's put this for reference. So your micrometer or you can use this. Yeah, this Greek letter mu. So mu I just like using the it's easier. Mu and this is equal to 1/1,000,000th of a meter. And you could also call it a micron. Going further, and are therefore only visible under light or electron microscope. There are generally two types of cells: eukaryotic cells, which contain a nucleus, and prokaryotic cells, which do not have a nucleus. Prokaryotics. Actually, I think it's pronounced prokaryotes. Are single-celled organisms such as bacteria, whereas eukaryotes can be single-celled or multicellular. In multicellular organisms, every cell in the organism's body is derived ultimately from a single cell in a fertilized egg. And MES note, fertilization or fertilization with a Z there, see spelling differences for more info. Also known as generative fertilization, zygamy, or actually I think it's pronounced syngamy, and impregnation is a fusion of gametes to give rise to a new individual organism or offspring and initiate its development. And the cycle of fertilization and development of new individuals is called sexual reproduction. And processes such as insemination, which is the introduction of sperm into a female's reproductive system, or pollination, which is the transfer of pollen, which produces gametes from a male part of a plant to a female part, which happen before the fusion of gametes, are also sometimes informally called fertilization. But fertilization is more specifically is the fusion of the actual gametes. And a gamete is a haploid cell that fuses with another haploid cell during fertilization in organisms that reproduce sexually. And gametes are an organism's reproductive cells, also referred to as sex cells. Yeah, so more information on gametes and haploid cells. So in species that produce two morphologically distinct types of gametes, and in which each individual produces only one type, a female is any individual that produces the larger type of gamete called an ovum, and a male produces the smaller type called a sperm. So there's a sperm, there's the ovum. The sperm and ovum are fusing. And now going over the haploid, first we got to discuss, haploid, we'll discuss ploidy, ploidy. So ploidy is the number of complete sets of chromosomes in a cell, and sets of chromosomes refer to the number of maternal, or mother, and paternal, which is the father, chromosome copies, respectively, in each homologous chromosome pair, which organisms naturally exist as. Yeah, so in other words, ploidy is the number of chromosome sets that it has, the complete ones in a cell, and then the number of copies of those is the sets of chromosomes refer to the number of those, of the copies. So if there's, let's say you have 5 complete sets, and then there's 2 copies of each one of those. So those would be 2 sets of those chromosomes. Yeah, so going further. So somatic cells, tissues, and individual organisms can be described according to the number of sets of chromosomes present. And here's added this reference. Somatic cells, they are non-sex cells. So basically all the other cells besides the gametes that are involved in in reproduction. So that fuse together. So going with the other gametes. So one gamete fuses with the other gender. Yeah, so going back here, so somatic cells, non-sex cells, tissues, and individual organisms can be described according to the number of sets of chromosomes present, which is called the, quote, ploidy level. So monoploid has 1 set, and diploid has 2 sets, so you have 2 copies, and triploid has 3 sets, tetraploid has 4 sets, pentaploid has 5 sets, hexaploid 6, heptaploid or septaploid 7 sets, etc. So different number of copies of these complete sets of chromosomes, which contain part or all of the genetic material of the organism. So the generic term polyploid is often used to describe cells with 3 or more chromosome sets, so 3 or more copies of the chromosomes. So a couple of homologous chromosomes or homologs are a set of one maternal and one paternal chromosome that pair up with each other inside a cell during fertilization. So let's go make this a bit smaller. Yeah, so basically it would split up these together there. Yeah, so instead of having exact copies, you're going to have one copy from the maternal and one copy from the maternal. Yeah, during fertilization. So going further, so a haploid set that consists of a single complete set of chromosomes equal to the monoploid set. So this is a haploid. It's the reason for the different word for haploid or monoploid is because during reproduction you would split. You would divide this by a half for each maternal pair. So each maternal and paternal. So a haploid set that consists of a single complete set of chromosomes equal to the monoploid set, as shown in the picture above, must belong to a diploid species. Yeah, in other words, if this is a haploid, then this must be from a diploid species. So this one is half of this diploid, which is 2n. If a haploid consists of two sets, yeah, it must be of a tetraploid or 4 sets of species. So in other words, this is half of it during reproduction. So if this haploid was 2 sets, then it had to have come from a tetraploid or 4 sets species. So going further. Yeah, so here is a haploid. So remember that it's to distinguish a haploid from a monoploid. But in this case, they're the same, but a haploid is to indicate that it's from a diploid species. So a haploid, one set of genes or chromosomes, and a haploid in humans is 23. So 23 haploid ones. Those are only sex cells, but then all other body cells have 2 copies of each of these chromosomes. So then it will be a 46. So here's a haploid in humans, 23, which is again only in sex cells that appear, and then 2 complete sets of genes, chromosomes, and diploids. Yeah, or in other words, a diploid in humans, 46 all body cells or somatic cells. So that's a figure there. I got this figure from this link right here. This is slideserve.com. So a haploid has 2 related definitions to go even further into it. A cell with half the number of sets of chromosomes found in the somatic cells, which are just the general cells of the body and not sex cells, and also a cell with 1 and only 1 set of chromosomes and synonymous with the term monoploid. So again, just to distinguish when it is a monoploid and when it is just half of whatever the body cells are. All right, let's go further. So a zygote is a eukaryotic cell formed by fertilization event between 2 gametes. So when they fuse together, you get a zygote. A zygote's genome is a combination of the DNA in each gamete and contain all of the genetic information necessary to form a new individual. An egg is the organic vessel containing the zygote in which an embryo develops until it can survive on its own, at which point the animal hatches. An egg results from fertilization of an egg cell or ovum. And an embryo is the early stage of development of a multicellular organism, and a newly developing human is typically referred to as an embryo until the 9th week after conception, when it is then referred to as a fetus. In other multicellular organisms, the word, quote, embryo can be used more broadly to any early developmental or life cycle stage prior to birth or hatching. And here is a male human embryo, 7 weeks old or 9 weeks gestational age. And yeah, look how small that is there. It's about 1.5 centimeters long. It's pretty small. And the gestational age is a measure of the age of a pregnancy, which is taken from the beginning of the woman's last menstrual period, abbreviated LMP. So menstruation, also known as a period, and many other colloquial, or actually I think it's pronounced colloquial, or in other words, casual, informal terms, is a regular discharge of blood and mucosal tissue from the inner lining of the uterus, called the endometrium, or I think it's pronounced endometrium, through the vagina. A mucous membrane or mucosa is a membrane that lines various cavities in the body and covers the surface of internal organs. The uterus, from Latin uterus, plural uteri, or womb, is the male-female hormone-responsive secondary sex organ of the reproductive system in humans and most other mammals. Things occurring in the uterus are described with the term in utero. Yeah, it is within the uterus that the fetus develops during gestation. And yeah, here's inserted the gestation here. So gestation is the period of development during the carrying of an embryo and later fetus inside viviparous animals. In other words, the embryo develops within the parent. And yeah, I think this is actually pronounced viviparous. So yes, again, I had to Google pronunciation on Google search. So going further, so a hormone, because a uterus is a hormone responsive. A hormone is any member of a class of signaling molecules in multicellular organisms that are transported to distant organs to regulate physiology and behavior. Yeah, and where physiology again is the functions, mechanisms of the organism. Yeah, including how cells, organs, etc. Yeah, carry out chemical and physical functions. All right, let's go further. Yeah, so a sex organ or reproductive organ is any part of an animal or plant that is involved in sexual reproduction. The reproductive organs together constitute the reproductive system. In animals, the testes in the male and the ovary in the female are called the primary sex organs. All other organs are called secondary sex organs, divided between the external sex organs, the genitals or genitalia, visible at birth in both sexes, and the internal sex organs. And here's a diagram of the uterus and uterine tubes. So there's the vagina, and there is the cervix over there. There's a uterus over there, and a uterine tube, and where the ovaries are connected to it. Yeah, that produce the eggs. And going further, yeah, this next figure I got this from, let's see, the website here. This one is from tampax.com. And yeah, so the period occurs every 21 to 35 days, and it's part of the girlology section. So the menstrual cycle right here, let's just start off from here. So follicular phase, this is when several eggs mature inside small cysts or follicles, and this is inside the ovaries right here. And then the next one is ovulation. This is when an egg is released from the biggest follicle and travels through the fallopian tube where it can be fertilized. If it is not fertilized, it dissolves in about 24 to 48 hours. So it goes down here to fallopian tube, so the biggest egg or the biggest follicle, it travels down. I mean, the egg released from the biggest follicle goes down here. Yes, the biggest egg in the egg in the biggest follicle, and the follicle, just here's out of this definition. A follicle is a small spherical or vase-like group of cells enclosing a cavity in which some other structure grows or other material grows, or other material is contained. In this case, the egg is produced inside the follicle with the cavity. And then the next phase of this ovulation one, so yes, so the egg drops in here where it can be fertilized. If it's not fertilized, it dissolves in about 24 to 48 hours. And then the next phase is the luteal phase, or luteal phase. This is when the endometrium, the lining of the uterus, is thick and prepared to support a pregnancy or be released in a period. Yeah, so if there is a pregnancy, or if the egg does get fertilized and it becomes, you go to the pregnancy stage. If it doesn't, this dissolves, so you're gonna have a thick lining around here, and this needs to gets ejected out. And this is where menstruation occurs. This is the quote period when the endometrium or lining of the uterus sheds over 3 to 7 days if there is no pregnancy. So yes, you can be releasing this blood and bunch of mucus and so on.